Hi, everyone. It's Jerry. Welcome to You Own It with Jerry Thompson. I am right sitting here in Buffalo, New York, and it is between Christmas and New Year. So I hope you enjoyed your holidays and are going to have a happy New Year. This is episode, I think it may be episode 8, 7 or 8. It's enough now that I've stopped counting. And today we're going to, if you've seen the prior episode, you've seen how to negotiate items not to make mistakes. What's last episode was what's an escalation clause, how to market your house, the steps to getting your house ready for sale. And today we're going to talk about what's my home worth. So one of the first steps in getting your house ready for sale, or you making an economic plan as to where you're going to go when you sell your house or how much money you're going to get when you sell your house, is trying to establish what my home is worth. And there are three common perceptions of value that people have, none of which exactly translate to what your house is worth when you decide to go on the market. Those three values, traditionally, people, when they think about what their house is worth, they're thinking about the assessed value. What's the town say that their house is worth for tax purposes? There is the appraised value. What's my house worth last time I did a home equity line of credit and an appraiser came in? Or I did some estate planning and I hired an independent appraiser who doesn't sell real estate, somebody that just comes in and looks at the house and does a whole series of pluses and minuses and gives you an exact valuation. And then there's the third, which is, what do I think my house is worth? What I call my value. So a lot of times before people are thinking about selling, they're thinking of their house in terms of, what do I think it's worth? What does the assessor think it's worth? What's the appraised value think it's worth? Or, maybe a 3A would be, what do I see it worth as an estimate, or an estimate on one of the multitude of websites that give you real estate advice on what your house is worth. Now, for this podcast, what I really want to talk to you about is the two important values when you sell your house. One is, what is the list price? What are you going to be marketing it at? And two, ultimately, what the sale price is going to be in an open market, which I'm going to define for this purposes as market value. When you go onto the market to sell the property, what is initially, before you go on the market, the estimated market value, and then ultimately when you sell it, we hope the actual exact market value. Now, for market value purposes, let's define what market value is. And I got here a definition. I don't know where I got it, so I'm not going to credit it to anybody, but it was one of the real estate books that you use when you're. So market value is the most probable price that a property should bring in a competitive and open market under all conditions to a fair sale. The buyer and seller each have to act prudently, knowledgeable with knowledge, and assume the price is not affected by undue stimulus. Implicit in the definition is that the consumption of sale on a specific date and the passing of title from seller to buyer under the following conditions. Buyer and seller are normally motivated. Both parties are well-informed or well-advised, and each acts in what they consider to be their own best interest. A reasonable time is allowed for exposure to the open market. Very important factor. Payment is made, and the price represents the normal consideration for the property sold unaffected by special or creative financing or sales concessions granted by the associate sale price. Now, that's the dictionary definition, but in the simplest terms, it's something that's been on the open market. The normal buyers in the marketplace, people that are looking at other houses, considering competitive factors, are deciding to purchase the property, seeing that it's on the market. It is on the market for an open as well as a reasonable time frame. And that is what a buyer will pay. It is not, for example, in a commercial development, somebody might be building a Rite Aid on a corner and your house might be next door, and that developer comes in and gives you $500,000 for a house that fundamentally may be worth $150,000. It doesn't make your house down the street worth $500,000 because that was a specific motivated buyer with a specific purpose only for your house. It is not your niece and nephew buys your house from you at a value that you consider to be a deal, not open, wasn't offered to other people in the market. These are properties. This is properties that have hit the market on Friday. They've been on the market a few days. They have given everybody the opportunity to see it, and it is sold. That is the definition of market value. So when you start to talk about how do I establish a value for what my house is really worth in the market, I always say the best way to achieve this is to have a real estate broker over to your house or a real estate professional over to your house. Or if you want to try it yourself, you can try it yourself, but it's going to take a lot of website work, research on websites such as Realtor.com, Zillow, Homes.com, showing you what prior houses have sold for. And the best way to approach establishing a value for your home, and we're talking about what should it be worth, which is the first step in establishing your market strategy, is by doing what they call the comparable approach to other properties. Now, the comparable approach to other properties requires you to do a little bit of Ben Franklin, meaning Ben Franklin always said before making any decision, he's going to look at the pros and the cons, put them together in a list. And then if the pros outweigh the cons, that's the decision he's going to make. If the cons outweigh the pros, he's not going to make that decision. Now, when you're selling your house, what you want to do is look at every other house with blinders on. Pretend it's not your home. By the way, the market, unless you are really famous or you have some historic context, like you've founded the Roycroft campus, which Albert Hubbard's no longer with us, doesn't care who you are or what you did to your house. The stuff you did for yourself personally, they don't care. They're looking at it for what they're going to use the property for and how it compares to others. So when I say you have to put blinders on, the way to you do a comparable value of establishing what range your home should sell in is, A, look at other homes that are currently active on the market, because those will be your competitors. And then go step by step on 3 or 4 of them and say, is my house, if I was a buyer in today's market, is my house better or worse? Better or worse, better or worse. And in a way, kind of monetize that better or worse. So if you have a house 2 doors down from you and yours is a 4-bedroom with a finished basement and in-ground pool, and the one a couple doors down from you is similar square footage, is missing a bedroom, doesn't have a pool, doesn't have the finished basement, and that's on the market for $300, maybe yours is better. But how much did you think it's better? Is it better by 50? Better by 70? Is it better by 30? So look at what's on the market and go through better or worse. Better or worse, better or worse. Then look at other properties that have been on the market that are similar to yours. And by similar to yours, I mean similar location, similar school district, not too far away, similar footprint, square footage, age, and condition. Do not compare it to a brand new build if your house was built in 1920, but they're the same square footage. So you think it's too much of a stretch. Ones that have some similarities. So then you look at under contracts. Under contract houses are those houses that have been on the market and they are now under a signed contract, usually with remaining conditions. Those conditions might be a deposit's due, a home inspection's due, a mortgage still needs to come in. It's not a done deal yet because it hasn't closed, but it's far enough along that they're not showing it anymore. They're not looking for other buyers. It is under contract. And then do the same thing. Ben Franklin, your house in comparison to the under contract. Is my house better than that or worse than that? Better than that or worse than that? Better than that or worse than that? The disadvantage when you're using under contracts as when you're losing actives. When you look at actives, what you don't know is what they will sell for. When you're doing under contracts, what you don't know is what they did sell for. You usually can tell how long they were on the market. So in today's market, which is a very strong seller's market in my region, which is Erie County, Buffalo, New York area, if you see 4 under contracts that are like yours that have been on the market for less than 10 days, chances are good they all went for list price or higher. You don't know that 100% though until they actually close. The next type of property you want to look at is the pendings. These are similar to the under contracts in that they have a contract of sale. They have not closed yet, but they will be closing in the not too distant future. And the conditions are limited because the agents have felt comfortable enough to say these things are pending. Usually the conditions remaining are title work, something that shouldn't prevent it from closing other than what I define as things out of the transaction's control or the agents or the attorneys. Somebody loses their job. Something comes up in title that nobody discovered 20 years ago that makes a title unable to be transferred. Those are pendings. And then go back and do your Ben Franklin on those. Better or worse? Better or worse? Better or worse? One of the things I want you to remember is that all of this is usually done with a professional agent. You've had a walk through the house. When they walk through the house with you, they should have, if they're knowledgeable in the market, comparable properties that have a lot of similarities to your house. And those similarities can be square footage, location, yard size, bedrooms, baths. They don't need to be exact, though. They don't all need to be 4-bedroom, 2-bath if your house is 4-bedroom, 2-bath. They don't all need to be 1,900 square foot if your house is 1,900 square foot. One can be 1,900 square foot. The other could be 2,200 square foot. And the other one could be 1,650, assuming they're relatively similar, because then you can do your better and worse math. And then the last important numbers to look at are those that have sold that are like yours, meaning what did they list for? How long were they on the market? What did they sell for? When you go through this process, something that's going to become very apparent, and this is a very important factor when you're going on the market, is the price range. When you're trying to establish what your house is worth, the key, the item that you need to always remember is that nobody knows the exact number. When I look at a house, and I've done, last year I did 80 something transactions in a very specific region. I know the neighborhoods very well. I know the comparables. I can go better or worse, better, worse, better, worse, better, worse. I can tell you, I think your house is worth around $350,000. I don't know if it's going to sell at $350 or if it's going to sell at $380 or $342. The only one that knows that is going to determine that market value is the market. But what you're trying to do when you go through this comparable approach of properties is you're trying to get yourself within a range that makes your property marketable, depending on the market strategy you choose when you go onto the market. So when people say, what's my house worth? If they think their house is worth 600, but all the comparables are worth 350, chances are really good your house isn't worth 600, because the market doesn't care what you think your house is worth. The market cares what the market think the house is worth. If you say my assessor thinks my house is only worth 100, chances are very good, if they haven't updated assessments in 40 years, that that's not market value. Sometimes they assess them too high and they bring up market speeds. They have assessments that are too high, and that's why they have a challenge process of that. Or if you have the third value in your mind, which is some appraisal that was done with a specific purpose in mind, that also is not market value. What I'm talking about specifically here is how do you establish a market value based on what's current in the market and get yourself a price range based on those comparisons using the Ben Franklin pro and con technique, going through between 6 and 12 comparable properties. Those comparisons should be on the market, should be under contract, pending, and sold. And sold, by the way, should be relatively recent, unless you are in a specific market that there aren't any. A good example of that would be a rural market. Let's say you have an 82-acre farm in Yorkshire, New York, and there aren't many 82-acre farms as comparisons. There are hardly any 50-acre farms. In that case, an agent may need to go up to 20 or 30 miles away to similar markets and maybe even take a longer time frame in order to help you do an evaluation. And then you should factor that time frame and the difference in locations into your better or worse thoughts. This isn't establishing value, and market value is not rocket science. It is looking at the market honestly, looking at those that are similar in some ways, that if you were an independent buyer looking at your own house and had choices of those other houses, would they pay more for yours or would they pay less for yours? And then when you do all of that, it usually is like the clouds opening and the sunlight coming through. It becomes really apparent that the range that your house is going to sell in is range A, 350 to 370, range B, 360 to 380, range C, 340. It's always around the same range. When you honestly look at what's better and worse, better and worse, better and worse. And that should define decision one, which is what should the market bear for the house so that you can begin your financial plan for your next move. Meaning if you've gone through the comparable approach, you've established is my house worth more or less, more or less, more or less. My house is worth 350. Now you can do a seller's net sheet asking an agent what it costs to sell, what are the legal fees, what are the search and survey expenses, what are the transfer taxes, Are there any compliance expenses? Are there any inspections I need to do, like septic or well? And if I sell it at about value, what am I going to get in my pocket? Now, oftentimes people will get multitudes of opinion, meaning they'll have two different brokers give them an opinion. One of the keys in understanding real estate valuation, one of the important things, is the best broker with the best services, with the most experience, traditionally will do the best job in getting you the best price, right? You're going to court to defend yourself for the highest value you can in your house. Who are you going to hire? What attorney is going to come in there? The one for $80 an hour on the bus stop, or the one that may cost you more, but really knows what the heck they're doing? And when you're considering marketing your house and establishing market value, the reason I bring this up in the conversation is because oftentimes people can let their ego get in the way and take their value and place that on top of what the market says it's worth. And if their value's much higher than the market, oftentimes people won't hire the broker that told them the truth, but will hire the broker that thinks it's worth more, thinking that means they're going to get more, when in truth, you're going to get the market value that a reasonable buyer in an open market will pay. The price you choose is not how you should choose the broker. The price you and the broker choose collaboratively is what you should go on the market with, and you should choose the broker based on the one that's going to expose it to the market best. Exposure, marketing, and skill equal higher value. Naming a price arbitrarily does not. Now, once you've gone through your whole Ben Franklin system of, is my price higher or lower? Is my house better or worse? And taken an honest approach to comparisons. And by the way, if you don't want to have a broker over, if you do a lot of research today on the internet and you do an honest opinion, it's hard to do that with your own stuff. Sometimes you got to step outside and get a third party. That's one of the values of the broker. It's hard to say my house is not better than my neighbors. And I can give you countless examples where the homeowners told me that the reason their house is worth more than the neighbors is not that they have the same floors, not that they have the same bedrooms and baths, not that they have the same square footage. But when their house was built, they used these special nails. The nails are better. Well, nobody can see the nails. The reality is we can brag about the nails all day long, and most of the time, nobody cares. Is it well built? Is it well constructed? What's the floor plan? How's it feel? What's the decor? How have you decorated, staged, and prepared? Have you decluttered? Those can help your sale. Nobody cares about the hidden things in most circumstances where people like to take, hey, look, I didn't just, use half-inch plywood on the exterior sheathing. When I did, I nailed and glued. You can feel that cheap versus expensive house, but if they're both same age, similar, same builder, all that other stuff, and then you just add into those extra things, they usually don't translate directly to the market value because they're unseeable, unknowable, only known by the owner. Emotional value has no value, only owned by the owner. Selling a house often can be an emotional decision. Sometimes it's where you brought your children home. You celebrated your holidays with your family. You lost a loved one. That value has something to you, does not have anything to the market. And that can be really hard to kind of rip that Band-Aid off and recognize that the emotion that you feel about the transaction needs to be separated from the transaction. You can feel it still, but you can't price it. Does that make sense? You can feel it, you can't price it. So let's get back to this. Now you've decided to price your house and you've gone through your Ben Franklin strategy of where should my house sell? And you've taken an honest look and you've established this is about the range. My range is about 350. Now you have the hardest decision, which is marketing price strategy versus what you're hoping to get. In today's world where in every market, there is a pricing strategy that you need to consider. And I call them the Goldilocks strategies. You as a homeowner with your agent need to have an honest conversation about what your personality is and what strategy you want to take when you go to the market and the pros and cons. And the reason I call it a Goldilocks strategy is because there's really three ways to price a house. There's too hot, there's too cold, and there's just right. Now, those three ways, honestly, all can ultimately end up with market value, which is what a buyer will reasonably pay in the market, considering all things factors, proper exposure, good skilled agent, all helping you do this. But you've got to decide which direction you want to go. For example, and this is often debated in the industry amongst agents. I remember last year I lost a client because they were angry at me because we put a house on the market at what they considered to be too low of a price. And it was part of a strategy session between me and the seller. And we ended up selling it for $140,000 over list price, getting the seller more money than either one of us ever expected. And the client said, well, you priced it too low. We didn't price it too low. The market will support it. Trust me, the market will support it. The seller made a decision in the Goldilocks decisions, too hot, too cold, or just right. In that circumstance, they picked too hot, which is a lower price than you're expecting in the market in order to generate a frenzy. So let's start with the three of these, right? So one is what I consider to be the too hot strategy. And too hot doesn't make it the wrong strategy. In this market right now in Buffalo, New York, we are in a frenzied seller's market. And what that means to you as somebody that's thinking about selling is that oftentimes buyers walking in the door the first day, their expectations are they need to pay more than what you're asking to get the house. And how does that translate when I say too hot? Let's say you think your house is worth $350,000. You may be better suited in a seller's market like today, pricing it at $324,000. And you say, well, why would I price it for less than I think it's worth? Because if you price it at $350,000, here's what can happen. Buyers will come in the first day saying, I see this is priced $350,000, but this is only what it's worth. And they've been looking for months and months and months. And the first thing they think of is, well, $350,000, I don't want to compete for this listing. I don't want to pay $20,000 or $30,000 more for it. So the con or the pro to pricing with the too hot strategy is you're pricing it to exceed buyer expectations so that when they realize they need to enter a bidding war, they're prepared to pay over because that's what they expect the market to do. In today's market, that often happens. So sometimes if you pick a different strategy than too hot, you can stagnate in the market because people think there's something wrong with your house after it doesn't sell for a week because you're asking a price it should sell for, but buyers that looked at it initially thought they needed to pay more to get it off the market. So the too hot approach can be a very successful approach. Like the little story I told you a short minute ago where I had a client that was going to hire me, was upset that I had gone on the market with a different house for a lot less than they thought it was worth. And in this circumstance, the client thought the house was worth like $540,000. And when I did the too hot, the cold, Ben Franklin, all that stuff with the seller, we thought the house was worth around $540,000 as well. But the seller said, I want to be done with this in 1 weekend. I want it off the market and I want it competitive. We put it on at like $490,000. We ended up with 42 showings, 18 offers, and it sold north of $600,000, more than what everybody thought to begin with, because they picked the right strategy, which was the too hot strategy. Priced it low to generate activity. That was a winner with the too hot strategy. They got an exceptional value for the sale of the house. Where had we priced it at just right, what it was worth, we may not have generated 40 something showings and 16 offers. If we priced it as too cold, which is the old school way, which we'll describe in a minute, where you price it high and then you drop the price until you find the market, we may have not gotten any activity at all. And the seller might have had to suffer on the market for a sustained period of time. So the too hot strategy is pick your market value, range, and then price it below that with the expectation that you're going to hit the market. You're going to tear off the Band-Aid quickly. You're going to get a frenzy of activity. You're going to generate multiple offers or offers that try to get the house off the market immediately, well over list price. And oftentimes the too hot strategy in the seller's market will work to get you more than you expected or more than you expected in the market value. The just right strategy is the one that is a more traditional approach. And just right strategy assumes a normal real estate market where it will take 30 to 90 days to sell an average house. And that you look at the exact comparisons and you say everything's selling around $350,000. So we are going to go on the market at $349,900, which is just right. The benefit to the just right strategy is you're establishing your market expectations right up front. And you should not have to go into dealing with all sorts of showings all the way and multiple offers. You should be getting 1 or 2 offers all around list price. And sometimes it will take a little while, but you shouldn't get 30 showings in a weekend. You might get a showing on Wednesday, a showing on Friday, a showing the next Monday, a showing the next Wednesday. So the just right approach often gets you a list price and sale price that's very similar, but can take normal market time. And normal market time in a real estate market, although if you look at today's data, will tell you 7-8 days. Most of the markets that I have been in 34 years are about 60 days from the time you list a house to the time you sell it. And that's because most of the markets have focused on a just right pricing strategy or a too cold pricing strategy. And let's talk about the too cold pricing strategy. Too cold pricing strategy is where you take what you think it is worth and you price it 10% more. So you look at the comparables and you say, I think my house is worth more than all of those numbers that I've done. I think in theory, it should be $350, but because I got the best nails, I'm putting it on the market at $375. And most of the time, if you're a too cold pricing strategy person, you'll shrug your shoulders and you look at me and I'll say, I don't like that number. This market is not great. And you look at me and say, well, I can always come down, right? Usually that's an indicator. If you're I can always reduce the price later person, then too cold strategy may be something that you want to do. The benefit to the cold strategy is too cold strategy is occasionally somebody will come in and offer you close to that list price and you'll get a little bit more money than what you were hoping. Now, if you compare it to the too hot strategy, oftentimes too hot strategy is one weekend and you get more than actually your too cold price in a seller's market. In a buyer's market, the too cold strategy can be beneficial in some ways because sometimes you get to hold the line a little longer. You're a little more patient and you might win because that one buyer that will come along that does appreciate the things that you believe make it a higher price. So when you establish your market value, you have 3 strategies to choose from when you go on the market. And that should be a heart-to-heart conversation between you and your agent, and it should also fit who you are as a person from a comfort level. You need to be comfortable with your strategy. Between you and your agent, you both need to be confident and comfortable and recognize that what strategy you pick, you're going to live with, and that the two of you have come up with it together. It can be on the too hot strategy. It can be disappointing if you miss the market in price and you go expecting to get more than list price and it doesn't sell. I always say, if you do that and it doesn't sell, the market value was never what you thought it was. We were wrong. We missed the market value because the market value is property on the market for a period of time with proper exposure, professional services exposed to the world, the open market, and that open market reflecting what they think it's worth back to you. So if you pick the too hot strategy, usually what happens, you hit the market, you get a whole bunch of showings, you get multiple offers, and you're dealing with higher list prices. That's the benefit. The negative can be if you've established too low of a position. If it doesn't happen, it's a psychological, it's a hammer to the head. It hurts. But I thought it was worth $350. We priced it at $324, expecting multiple offers. Nobody wants it, right? Hard. But if you hit it right and you think it's worth $350 and it's too cold, it can go for $370. That's the market value. What it goes for is the market value, not what you've established. The just right pricing strategy usually means that you're going to be close to list price, but you're going to hang around the market a little bit. And you're just going to be a little bit firm. And then maybe if you're on a $350, you're expecting $350, somebody after 2 weeks might offer you $338 and you beat it back and forth and you end up at $343 with the home inspection and then you give them some credit back. That is kind of what I call the just right pricing strategy. And then the too cold pricing strategy. And the just right pricing strategy can be one for somebody that's comfortable, really needs to be around what they believe is an educated market price to sell and accomplish what they want to accomplish, and is also willing to be a little patient, meaning they're willing to deal with showing Saturday and Sunday, and then the next Saturday and Sunday, and a Thursday night at 7, and a Tuesday night at 6 o'clock, all to end up at what the market value is, right? The too cold pricing strategy is one I'm not a fan of, but I have seen people that are super comfortable with it, and ultimately the client is the boss. And if you're comfortable saying, I know my property's worth around $350, I'm going to price it at $390 and then hope somebody comes along and gives me $370 on that. And if they don't, then I'll drop it to $389. Then I'll drop it to $384. Then I'll drop it to $379. And this process can take weeks or years. Ultimately, it's not the agent's decision. It's your decision. The agent's going to guide you to around what the property is worth, and you're going to make a decision with the agent based on the options of too hot, too cold, or just right pricing strategies, and you can pick them, right? I always say Goldilocks said too hot, too cold, just right. But the bears that were sleeping in the beds or eating the porridge, one bear liked the too hot, one bear liked the too cold. You as a seller are the bear. You're not Goldilocks. The market is Goldilocks, picking which one they want. The buyer, right? So how do I figure out what my house is worth? Have somebody over, take a look, or take a look at the market yourself. Pick active, under contract, pendings, and sold properties similar to your house. Go through the list. Each one, look at it. Is mine better than or worse than? Better than or worse than? Better than or worse than? Is it worth more or less? More or less? More or less? Go through that list. Make it 7 to 12 long. You can get away with 3, but you should have a few more comparisons. Once you've done that, pick what you think the house should sell for about. Ask an agent or yourself, what am I going to do to make sure it's on the open market and being exposed to as many people as possible? Hire the person that will expose it to the most, that you think is going to do the best job negotiating, getting you the best price. Then pick your strategy. Am I at too hot? Do I want to hit the market running at a great price and have fight for it? Do I want to linger for a period of time and see if I can get pretty close to list price? Or do I want to put it on high, taking a swing, hoping that somebody will pay me 20, 30,000 over what the statistical comparables say? And if they don't, I can always take my time and come down until it's a more convenient time for I'm going to sell it. So there's only 2 things you as a seller can change when it comes to your market. One is once you're on the market, that's the house is all prepared. I don't want to get into all the staging and stuff like that. But there's only 2 things. Once you're on the market and you are prepared, assuming you're in A+ condition, there are only 2 items you can change. How long you're willing to wait to get the price or the price. Time or price. It's only 2 things you can change. So if you're on the market for 30 days, you haven't sold, and you want the time to speed up, you need to reduce the price. If you're on the market for 2 years and you haven't sold, you need to reduce the price, or you need to be willing to extend the time for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 20. You can extrapolate it as long as you want. Everybody has seen the sign that's been on this properties for years. You drive by them. Commercials very, very much like that. But it's a little bit more of a niche market. So some circumstances, the value may be there when they get the right tenant that's going to take that commercial site. So developers often are willing to wait a significantly longer time frame to get their price than they are to get their price in a short time. When you're selling a home, often you need to get your price in a short time, but only you can determine that. Once you've completed that, determine your pricing strategy, and then go on the open market. The open market then will submit contracts. You'll accept one of those contracts, and that will be your market value, which is not your assessed value, which is not your appraised value, which is not the value you think it's worth. Sometimes it can be higher or lower. And let me talk quickly before we wrap this up about one important component to when you establish your market value, and that's the psychological impact it will have on you. So no matter how long I've done this, I try to tell people there are things that even as a professional, psychologically, there are things impacting you in the decisions that you make. When you go on the market and you pick a price, let's say you sat down with an agent and you decided the market value was $350, but you decided you wanted to take the too cold. That's your style. You want to ask more. You want to ask $400,000. One of the big cons, one of the big detriments to that is that no matter how much you and the agent assure yourself that you are not going to lock in your value, when you are on the market and you get showings, you start to get excited. You start to think, oh boy, we're going to sell the house. You start to do the mental math and you start to count money that you don't have yet. So one of the things I always try to forewarn people is until the market tells you what it's worth, we only have estimates. We don't have final numbers. Do not, even though it is tempting. I mean, I have had scenarios where I've met with people We've said the house is worth around 300, and they decide we'd like to ask a little more. And I say, that's fine. Just remember what we did in comparisons. If it doesn't sell in a week, or two, I'm going to call you and suggest we need to make some adjustments in the price because you want to sell it in 30 days. You don't want to wait 2 years. You have somewhere to go. And we have a heart-to-heart conversation about strategy, what we're going to do. And they price it at that higher number. And then a week and a half later, we've had no showings. And I call them up and I say, do you remember we talked about this? And I thought 299 was a better number. You picked 324. Maybe it's time for us to make an adjustment. And then inevitably that homeowner will say something like, I can't sell for less than 320. And you go, what do you mean? You could sell for 280 a week ago. What's changed? Well, when we sell, we want to get boat too. And you go, what? What happens is psychologically, people go to bed or at night or whenever they're over the dinner table, they talk about the nets. It's really hard not to say, if we sell for, we're asking 420 now. And if we sell for 420, that means we can get a boat too. And then all of a sudden, it's harder to make the original decision because they preset their expectations to ones that are unreasonable. So try not to, in your head, count the money until it's shown in your bank account the day of the closing. I wish I could quote it, but it's like there's no one to hold them, no one to fold them, right? No one to walk away, no one to run. Is that Kenny Rogers? Something like that. In any event, don't count the money until it's done because we don't know what it's going to be until the market establishes the true market value. As always, I appreciate you listening. Hopefully this helps you a little bit when you start to decide how to value my house and selling it. Thanks for listening to You Own It with Jerry Thompson. See ya. Thank you so much for tuning in to You Own It. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any resources mentioned during the show. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow us on your favorite podcast apps, and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and greatest. All of our social channels are clickable in the show notes as well. I'd also like to remind you to check out our website, c21jerry.com. There you'll find more info on me as well as my latest listings for all of Western New York. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, through any big decision, you own it.